early on, I'd just like to thank Alistair and all his team, all the team of all the A Force for Good, who do such wonderful work on behalf of all the citizens of our beloved country. I think it's wonderful work they're doing, all of you. So thank you for that.
Well, thank you very much yourself, Will. You've been a great long-time friend of our organisation and a great supporter, and very, very grateful for all of that. Now, also an author as well, and we always like to plug your book, Capability Britain, for a country that works. What was the thinking behind writing this book?
Well, largely it was that there's so much talk about, decline, and everything's broken, and we're all doomed, and if the climate doesn't kill us, something else will. And I just thought, well, actually, there's a lot of positives in the country that need to be emphasised and built on. We've still got an educated population, a skilled population. We've still got quite a lot of industry, not as much as we should have, but we've still got a lot of industry, quite often in the very important defence sector, which is the residue of many of the engineering skills that are so important across the wider economy. We've still got an apprenticeship scheme which brings young people into work and into skilled work, and that's very important, and it ought to be expanded hugely. That would help enormously to solve a lot of the problems we see of social problems with young men without education or employment. We need to get people into apprenticeships. That's very important to do useful work. There's so much work that needs doing and it isn't being done currently. And what we have at the moment with a Labour government, Labour, well, it doesn't. It's like Alistair was saying about talking out the side of their mouths. They quite often now, in particular, talk the talk. They'll talk about HS2. A brilliant project, but they've been chopping and chopping and chopping, delaying and delaying and delaying. So we won't get the full benefits of HS2, even by the date they're now postulating. What was it, 2035 or something? I mean, talk about delay. Absolutely ridiculous.
Yes.
And there's so many other aspects of industry where now they're talking about steel, and they've put a little bit of support towards Scunthorpe, but not enough to Port Talbot, not enough to steel making in Scotland either. But still, the Scunthorpe works. Who owns it? A Chinese company. They still own it. We don't own it. The people don't own it. Our state, our nation doesn't own it. It's this Chinese company, and the suspicion was that Chinese company was very happy to pull the plug on British steel. It's still called British Steel, rather ironically, but they pulled the plug on British steel in order to benefit the Chinese steel industry. Well, surprise, surprise. But a country should look after its own national interests. I'm not knocking them for looking after their national interest, but I am very disappointed that the so-called Labour government isn't doing a similar thing of looking after the British national interest. Obviously not the English national interest, the British national interest, and that is so important. That's what needs to be done. It's ironic. Sorry?
I like the fact that your book definitely does emphasise the British angle, and you've always been very keen on the unity of the people of Great Britain, which is something that really appeals to us as well.
Yes, it's so important. I mean, the referendum result, which is now so routinely decried, and always has been by certain people, led usually by the SNP, that referendum, more than 17 million people voted for an independent, united Britain, in effect. How many people voted for Keir Starmer's Labour government in the recent election? 9 million. 9 million compared to 17 million. How dare he try to reverse the democratic decision of 17 million, which was the biggest single vote for anything in British history. how dare this leader of a minority government, which had so little support across the country. It was a 60% turnout in that election, and in effect Labour got something like 20% of the votes. A fifth of the electorate supported the Labour Party. So it's 30% of the votes, but given such a low turnout, only a fifth of the population actually supported that government. So they have what mandate is that? It's not a very strong mandate, is it? And certainly not to reverse a hugely democratic decision.
No, unfortunately, the way things work in the UK is that once you get into power, then you can tend to do, what you want, or rather, what you can get.
What you can get away with.
That seems to be about it.
Yeah. I think quite often recently we've seen that the government can be pushed back on some issues. I mean, I don't think it would have supported the people who work at the Scunthorpe Steelworks if those people there hadn't actually kicked up quite a fuss. And I know other steel workers across the country did without so much success. But it's very important that people put pressure on a government and put forward their own plans for building and restoring and expanding the industrial structure of the country. Because a country that hasn't got the capacity to produce its own steel, for instance, is extremely dependent on everybody else, for steel, because you need steel for your computers, your rail, just about everything you think of that you need. Steel is a vital component, and we would be, if we lost steel, we'd be the only G7 country without the capacity to produce quality steel on our own account, and that would be really backward step.
After writing a big manual like this, do you have any theories as to why successive British governments have let that sort of thing go in such a way? Is it just ignorance or lack of care or conspiracy or...
I don't think they put the country first. I think there's, like you see with those SNP people with their grossly inflated salaries. Once you're sitting there in Holyrood, getting into your bank account that much money every month, you really don't probably care very passionately about anybody else. And I do think it's very worrying that those people are so well paid for doing so little. I mean, Holyrood was never a great success, was it? You all know far more about it than I do. You know it more intimately than I do, at least. But to me, it's been a waste of space ever since it started. And it has got no right to exist. But does that explain why politicians do what they do? I don't know.
I think it does to an extent, and they take the easy route. Like, you take Holyrood, for example. Most of the people who are there are kind of, they've been lucky, they've been able to be accepted by the Labour Party, the SNP. They've been put in areas where they're going to get in. They've got a really nice, cushy number, and they're not, for no reasons against them as such, but they're not exactly great thinkers or even ideologues or passionate, really. They're just happy to get their £75,000 a year, and they'll just keep quiet. And it's the same in Westminster as well. Yes. And if you are an outspoken voice, you're going to get chucked out of your party because you're going to be too much of a problem. So you have to go along. So I think the party system is heavily to blame. I'm not saying that there's a solution to that. I can't imagine what it is, but there is very much like just that's ingrained in the institution.
Yeah. It makes it very hard for the members of those parties to prioritise anything except their survival and advancement within those parties. And then that means obviously the national interest goes right down to the bottom of the pile of their concerns. And Starmer has been pretty rough. I mean, one thing he did turn the Labour Party from being a pretty shambolic organisation under Mr Corbyn into being a party which at least managed to win that general election. And he did it by kicking out a load of people who really were not any help to his party. But nonetheless, what did he do with that power that he's now got? That's what is alarming. I think it's very alarming indeed. That the fact that he's effective, it makes him more dangerous in many ways. And his ability to talk in response to what people are concerned about, but not do anything, is very concerning. I mean, like Alistair has produced this policy about refugees and asylum seekers. Well, in the old days, it was the case that still, whatever happened, state had the sovereignty, could say yes or no to accept or not accept whoever approached its borders. Originally, the whole idea of a refugee was that you were in danger in your own country and you were allowed to seek refuge in the first safe country you could reach. It's like sanctuary, like somebody being attacked by an anti-Jewish mob could seek sanctuary in the first church they could get into. But they weren't entitled to say, well, I don't like this church very much, I'll go to that church down the road because they provide far more benefits than our church here. So that's what's happening. Instead of, they're not staying in the first safe country they reach. For goodness sake, isn't France fairly safe? Isn't Italy safe? They reach Europe, and because of the open borders policy of the Schengen thing, they can then just wander across the whole of Europe and go to the place which offers the best benefits.
Yes, my studies have shown me that what's happened with that UN Refugee Convention is that that idea of the safe country, the first safe country, it's been expanded now, that it doesn't really have any effect. So you could try arguing that you're not allowed to go back, but the judges will look at case law and they'll say, oh no, we no longer really hold to that notion. It's like one of these ideas that it's an idealistic idea, but in practice the judges and the precedent, as it were, no longer really holds to that anymore. But it is ridiculous because France is obviously a safe country. But France isn't going to take them back, because the way that France looks at it is, well, they're only in France because they're trying to get to Britain. And until you stop them getting to Britain, they're always going to come to France. And so, like, Britain is the problem. And they're actually correct. We are the problem here. We are the people our government is the magnet that's bringing them in to France. And France don't really need to raise a finger. And arguably they shouldn't even bother when it's our fault that they're there in France. That's the way the French look at it, and that's the way they've looked at it since this began in 2017, 2018. I've got news reports in our detailed files here talking about the mayor of Calais saying it's Britain's fault and getting angry with Britain because of these people in their towns and vicinities. So it's our fault, and until we do something along the lines of what I'm suggesting in that document, then it's not going to get any better.
Indeed, yes. I've read a lot of what you've written on this subject, Alistair, and it's just absolutely diamond. It's absolutely first-rate stuff, and I'm sure this new document will be as excellent as all the rest, and it needs to be widely read and acted on. I think it's really important. A nation that can't control its borders is in some trouble. You see all these boats full of young men, although that was that Labour minister who said they were mostly women and children, didn't she? Well, she must be blind or something, I don't know. Sorry.
Yes, it was a bloke, but yeah.
It was absolutely nonsensical. I just saw a picture in a paper this morning of a boat with about 100 blokes on it, didn't see many women or babies on it, and they were all of fighting age. Where they come from countries that have been wrecked by war, so quite often they're severely damaged people, PTSD, suffering from that, and they bring those problems into this country. And when you analyse the ethnic background of various kinds of criminals in this country, you will find all too many Albanians here running the drugs business, running the prostitution business. You've seen that you've got people of Pakistani heritage running grooming gangs. It's not as if we didn't have any before, but some certain ethnicities seem to run to particular kinds of crime, and we don't want to be importing that kind of problem. We really don't. It's not sensible at all.
That's right, because these are people coming from a violent culture, and that's just the way that it is. And they're not like the wee buddies that live in our wee Scottish villages. They're men from a seriously, often anyway, they've seen terrible things that hopefully none of us will ever see in our lifetime.
Yeah.
And so it is a threat to our safety as well. I mean, I have this phrase, the UN Refugee Convention, it's not fit for purpose, and it is an active threat to our national sovereignty, security, and the safety of the people. And as such, it needs to end. Yeah, this article here states, it says, most migrants are children, claims minister. But it says Home Office data shows 84% of arrivals over the year to March 2025 were men, with 12.5% women, and the rest of undetermined gender at the time of the release. I don't know if that few percentage would be children or something like that. I don't know why they would. I don't know how they say that, but certainly 84% grown men.
Yeah. Yeah, quite.
But sometimes these politicians just bank on the listener not having a clue. And so they'll just say stupid stuff, knowing that these people are never going to check up. They're just going to listen to me, and so I can just say whatever I want, and I'll dominate this particular argument at this particular moment, and for them that's all that matters. It's not a good attitude.
Well, that was very much David Cameron's attitude during the EU referendum. I'm Mr. Lord Snooty, and I know it all, and you plebs better just do what I say, basically, because I can't negotiate very well. I know that, really, but it doesn't matter because I can get away with it. I'm still Prime Minister. I'll carry on being Prime Minister. After all, I'm Eton and Oxford, darling. So
yes,
it's like it's really.
And he did get away with it as well,
for a bit.
As did Boris Johnson.
Yeah.
Some of these guys, they just always land on their feet.
Well, they
Totally.
do live in a different area of the world, shall we say, socially anyway.
Well, I'll tell you something. When they were at Oxford together, that group of the Bullingdon Club, I was at Reading University, 15 minutes, 20 minutes on the railway line from Reading, from Oxford. So they were my peers. They are my peers, essentially. And they went their way as a consequence of going to Oxford, and I went my way as a consequence of going to Reading University. So I don't know what that was. But if I had ever met them, I don't know I would have had very much in common with them at the time. That was for certain. Yeah.
Well, it shows us that you can't generalise about generations there.
That's true. That's true. Well, I just want to give a shout out once again to your book, Capability Britain for a Country That Works. And a lot of good stuff in there. People will get it from Amazon. This one, which was written when was this one done?
2018.
Well, that was 2018, yeah. So that was just a couple of years after the Brexit referendum, the road to freedom. If you're interested in the Brexit and European Union debate and how it relates to British the British nation and its economy, then this is definitely one again to look at. Again, you'll get that by just typing in Brexit, the road to freedom on Amazon.
Yes, I think a lot of us thought at the time, when we'd voted and got that historic victory, then that was it, right? Fine, we'll be okay. The debate's over, we've won it, we can sit back and, the politicians will do as they've been told. Not quite. Did they? No. I mean, Theresa May classically said Brexit means Brexit, and then she did everything she could to kind of say Brexit means the EU again. And as Keir Starmer, of course, famously wanted a second referendum. If you don't get the right result from those damn people who insist on voting the wrong way that I told them not to vote, then you must ignore what they said and then try and override it whatever way you can. And there's Alistair Campbell still trying to do the same thing along with his other mates in the Labour Party.
That's
and
right.
Lib Dems, Lib anti-Dems we should call them.
Yeah. I think it was a genuine kind of people's revolution in the sense, or democratic revolution, that the elites were simply not wanting and not ready for and not prepared to accept. And to this day, many of them have still not swallowed the bitter pill and are still pining after the old days. And we've got to just be careful that they don't get their way again. Always vigilant.
Well, as we say, the struggle isn't over there. Just like, in Scotland, I really think the separatists are on the back foot at the moment. They seem to be bitching against each other. They're two big, charismatic, so-called, leaders. One's dead and the other's disgraced, and they're left with very second-rate people, third-rate, fourth-rate, fifth-rate. John Swinney, sixth-rate. I don't know, but they're not impressive, and they're like rats in a sack now, aren't they? Fighting over the succession, after Hamza Yousaf's absolute failure.
Well, they can still bring the country down, regardless of how competent or incompetent they are, and it's something that's why we're always going to have a job here at A Force for Good, because that particular threat's never really going away, and it's our duty and indeed our pleasure to fight it. Well, it's coming close to the end here, so I just want to say thanks very much for coming on tonight. You've been able just to remind us that the EU matter is again something that's not going away, requires constant vigilance. And so thank you for all the work that you do and all the efforts. And I know you're writing articles on a regular basis, getting published in various places as well. So thanks for keeping the British end up, as they say.
Well, thank you, and as I say, thanks to all the team at A Force for Good. You are wonderful. You're doing a wonderful job. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Well, it's our pleasure, Will. Okay. Well, enjoy the rest of your evening, and we'll have you back on again sometime.
Thank you. That'd be good.
Cheers.